Hello students. This video is a quick review of MLA citation and works cited lists. I know you've gotten plenty of information about this already this semester in your nuts and bolts handout and in some of the other materials that I've posted on D2L, but I wanted to just review a few things so they're really clear for you going into the final stretch here. So just to remind you why we bother with all of this, there are at least three big reasons. First, we show our work. We show that we've done the research and that we can back our claims up. Second, because it's the right thing to do, we want to give credit to the sources for the work that they've done. And third, because it boosts our credibility. Our claims become more believable to an audience when we can show that we have found them in our research. So let's review what an in-text citation is. That simply means a place inside your essay before the works cited list where you give credit to your sources. Remember that we must do this whenever we use their words in a direct quotation or their ideas if we're paraphrasing or summarizing. So if you haven't given credit to the author by name in the sentence itself, you do so in the end in parentheses in a parenthetical citation. Again, a parenthetical citation just means that you're providing the author's last name and page number, if you have one, in parentheses at the end. More specifically, again, you put your citation in parentheses at the end of the sentence, whether it's quotation, their words, or paraphrase, their ideas. The period goes after the last parenthesis. Okay, so here's an example. As experts have noted, change is perhaps the one constant of contemporary academic life. Here's the author's last name, which we haven't yet said, and the page number, and the period goes here. It doesn't go before the citation, it only goes after. Now, if you give us the author's name inside your sentence, you don't need to repeat it at the end. So in this case, in her preface to the MLA handbook, Kathleen Fitzpatrick writes, same quotation, in this case, all you need is the page number. Now, some of you, most of you have a lot of sources without page numbers at all, in which case you don't have anything at the end if you've already provided the author's name. Okay, so give us the author's last name if you haven't already. Now, the works cited list. At the end of any essay that cites a source, you should have a works cited list. And this also helps to give proper credit. Now, if the in-text citation has only told us the author's last name, your readers might want a fuller picture of that source. So the works cited list makes it easy for readers to take a look at the source and find out more, such as the publication date, the kind of place it was published. If you've written your MLA citations carefully, we'd be able to tell from the citation if it's a scholarly journal article, for example, if you found it on a library database. And then we might even be able to go find your sources ourselves if we want to. So every source that's used in your essay must be traced to your works cited list, and vice versa. Every citation in your works cited list must correspond to the sources cited in your essay. So let's look at a sample student paper. Okay, here's a sample student paper. English 102 students, you've seen this sample paper before, and it's got a lot of great details in it, so I'm going to continue to use this for an example. And the first citation you'll notice is what you do if you have a source that doesn't have an author listed. In this case, this student has taken the title of the source, which will appear first in her works cited entry, and she's put it in quotation marks. Okay, if your works cited entry asks you to put the author or the title in quotation marks, or if it asks you to italicize the title, then you do the same within your essay itself. Okay, so let's take a look. Here she has FMLA, and here she's citing an author named Rubin. Let's see if we can easily find those on her works cited list. Here is the FMLA citation. Notice how she doesn't have to put the entire title when she cites it. She just has to put enough that we can find it on her works cited list. And it's easy to find because it's alphabetized, and hanging indent is used so that the citations are really easy to work with. What was the other source we said we would look for? Rubin, right? There it is. There's Rubin. Okay, we'll come back to this works cited list in a minute, but there are a couple other in-text citation things I want to point out. Remember, if you don't have a page number, you just put the closed parentheses on the other side of the author's name. Okay, now here's an example. According to Rebecca Ray et al. And the others in their research published, there's a typo, she doesn't need to repeat the author's name at the end of the sentence because it's already there. In this case, the writer provides the page number. If you don't have a page number, then you would just leave it off, put the period there. Okay? Here's another example of citing the source where she hasn't given the author's name in the lead-in, so she says it here. All right? So here, again, if you've provided the last name in the lead-in, in the sentence itself, you don't repeat it. But if you do something like this and just give credit to the journal that it's published in or the other publication, if you lead in some other way, you provide the author's name at the end. A few other things I want to point out. This is an example of how to cite a source when there are two authors. This use of the word "and" tells us that these are two authors of the same source. Okay. Down here, see this quoted in? Remember how a lot of your sources will themselves cite good sources, and you want to use a quotation that your source used as well. This quoted in is a way to give credit to the source itself and also where you found it. So in this case, this student is using research by Chatterjee and Markowitz and also Sod. But these sources aren't going to be in her works cited list because they're not the author she used. The author of the source that she used is Aitken et al. So this signals to us both who said this particular bit of information, but also where the reader can find it, what author she used, and which author is going to be on her works cited list. So let's skip down again, and we will see that there is Aitken et al. On her works cited list. Okay. This et al. Abbreviation is what you use when a source has multiple authors, more than two. And here is what you do if you have multiple sources that make a similar point. You put the first author, the author of the first source, and then a semicolon, and then the author of the second source. This helps readers to see that you found this in multiple sources. It also shows that you're really thinking as a researcher and a reader. You're making connections between multiple sources. Here's the quoted in again. So in this case, the source is written by Miller and Alderman, but they quote these other people. She wants to give credit to them, but also tell us what source she found it in. Okay, so if we had time, we would look to see that every single in-text citation matches the works cited list, and it does. Okay, now here's her works cited list. Notice how nice and reader-friendly this is. Simply works cited list, or works cited listed at the top of the page. Put works cited at the top of the page. Sources are listed in alphabetical order, as we already saw, and hanging indent is used. If you don't know how to use hanging indent, I've put a link for you on D2L under content, under MLA citations and works cited list. I can't remember the title of the module there, but you'll be able to find it. And then notice how some titles are in quotation marks and some titles are italicized. This is really important. This tells us a little bit about the source. So we know that titles of articles are in quotation marks, and then titles of the publications they're published in are italicized. Again, if you italicize something in your works cited list, you'll want to italicize it in your paper. If it's in quotation marks in your works cited list, you'll want it in quotation marks in your paper. So here's an example way at the end of a magazine source. A lot of you are using sources like this. You've got the author's name, first, last, period. The title of the article in quotation marks, period. And then the title of the magazine, comma, the date, comma, and the URL, the website, with a period. All of your citations should have a period at the end. Here's a website, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, excuse me. So the authors, period, the title of the article, period, the title of the website in italics, the date, the URL, ending with a period. Most of her sources are scholarly journal articles, and so you'll notice that they have even more information, a volume number, page numbers because she's working with a PDF, so that she has the page numbers that were in the original print version. And then, because she found this on a database from the library, she includes the name of the database and the DOI, the Digital Object Index or indicator, and a period. So this tells us, if you're in English 102, that you've met the requirements to use library sources. Okay, again, only sources that you use the library databases for will have this name of the database and the DOI. Otherwise, you're going to have the website, the URL. And if you work with a print book, you obviously won't have any of that. So again, this is a very easy, reader-friendly works cited list that makes it easy for us to find more out about her sources. And she's also given proper credit to everybody, which is a really important thing. The last thing is just to remind you about this nuts and bolts writing guide here and all the information that you already have at your fingertips. Let's skip down to in-text citations. Okay, this is some of the information that we went over earlier. Introducing quotations, some other principles. Block format if you must quote longer than 4 lines. And then here's information about writing your MLA works cited list. Okay, so if you are using a tool that helps you form your citations, that's terrific. If you're not, though, well, even if you are, you should still proofread and make sure that it's doing things correctly. If you aren't using a tool that helps format your citations, figure out what kind of citation you're working with, and then follow the formats that I've provided for you on page 9. Okay? Again, for those of you in English 102 doing research, you must include the name of the database that you've used to find your sources on the library databases, and that also helps me give you credit for meeting that requirement. Okay? If you have any questions, you know what to do. Send me an email. I'd be happy to help you out. The most important thing, though, is that you make an effort to give proper credit to your sources. Give them the shout out that they deserve for the work that they've done, and show that you are credible as a writer because you have done your research and you know how to give it credit. Happy revising.